Finally, a reason to go back to the office. Introducing 9 to 5 Warriors, an exciting new toy line created for the Toys R Us kid that never grew up. Offering 10 unique characters that are perfect for your cubicle or home office. The 9 to 5 Warriors are available through Big Bad Toy Store. Join the battle alongside Major Eraser and the Water Cooler Commandos as they keep the peace. Or wreak havoc with Colonel Custard and the Break Room Bandits. Choose your side as these two forces clash over total office domination.
It happens every day from 9 to 5.
Warning, do not leave unattended. Each figure sold separately. When you punch out, they come punching in.
Hey guys, this is Pixel Dan. Thank you for joining me for another interview. Today we are going to be talking about a new indie toy line that has really caught my attention because it's totally a Pixel Dan style toy line. Something that I think looks incredibly cool, and I wanted to get some more information on it and kind of help spread the word on it. So today we're going to be talking about 9 to 5 Warriors. And joining me to talk about that is the creator of the new toy line, Brandon Braswell. Brandon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. Like, honestly, big fan. So it's surreal to be here. Like, we were talking this before, but Dan's been on. I've been watching for 10, 12 years. I was like, how long have you been on it? So it's kind of awesome to see you've been going on since 2007. It's insane.
It's insane. I know. It blows my mind sometimes that I'm still sitting here doing this. But you know what? There's always fun things to talk about. Like, I love this hobby. I love fun toys. And it's funny because the things that we're going to be talking about today, the 9 to 5 Warriors, is like so reminiscent of some of those weird kind of niche toy lines from the 1980s and the 1990s. And you're talking about like how long ago I started doing this. One of the very first videos I did was on one of my favorite weirdo toy lines from Mattel called the Food Fighters.
Yes.
And I think your new line here, 9 to 5 Warriors, definitely seems to be paying homage to a line like Food Fighters. Is that right?
100%. It's definitely an homage to it. Like, growing up, I grew up with the Food Fighters after they're discontinued. So even in the 90s, like 93, I remember discovering them and falling in love with them. I was like, what the hell? And it was a real big trigger for me, like something that like sparked imagination overload, is because at the time I was also creating like figures out of my school supplies. I was always like a very creative kid. So when I saw like a plastic dog shaped toy, like Food Fighters, I was like, oh my God, I need to have this. And yeah, the love story instantly started at that moment.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I still remember finding those. I think they were already discontinued when I found them too, or like being clearanced out. But I have very fond memories of like as a kid, it was either after Christmas or after birthday where I had like money to spend, like my own money, right? And I remember going to a Hills department store. I don't know if you remember Hills at all, but that's where Oh, you had Caldor. So Hills was like that, but I'm here in the Midwest. We didn't have Caldor, but we had Hills.
Yeah.
That's where I first found Food Fighters, and Fat Frenchie was my first one. And I instantly fell in love with how weird they were. So your line definitely caught my attention when it first kind of hit the scenes. And I know that this has been like a long time coming, right? I know you attempted the Kickstarter route and have been trying to kind of get this going for a while. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the origins of this line and what this line actually is?
Sure. So the story actually, it started around 2012. So I always, I lived in LA, and at the time there's this cool restaurant, and you had to like kind of wait online to get into the restaurant. And next door to it was a vintage toy shop. So as you wait for your name to be called, you'd walk into this toy shop and they'd call you on an intercom. And at the time I didn't collect toys. I had no interest in toys. I was like 20 something years old. And I walked in, I got smacked with nostalgia, and I was just like, oh my God, like a wave of memories came back. All the synapses were firing, all these forgotten memories, like, it's instantly resurged. And I was like, this is crazy. And I just, at that moment right there, I knew I wanted to make a toy. So a little backstory, like I'm in the video production world. So I know the power of like invoking an emotion or telling a good story, but I never felt that way with a physical product. So that moment when I was hit with nostalgia and all those memories and all those like imagination came through, I was like, I have to make a toy. I have to do something. like this for the generation growing up today. And I went home. One of the first thoughts was Food Fighters, funny enough. And I think I started just purchasing stuff on eBay, like, oh my God, I remember that. Oh my God, I remember that. Just to like kind of keep going that nostalgia drug, as I'm sure all your fans and you know how it starts.
I was gonna say, I feel like we all started the same way, right? You remember something that you had, and then it's just eBay, just tracking them all down again.
I had the excuse of like design, I love packaging. Like my room is full of packaged like toys, vintage. So I love the whole design package, the aesthetic, everything, opening up the toy, like that whole nine yards. So for me, I want to relive that moment and study it. So I went into the deep spiral of repurchasing my toys for research, basically.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So and so the Food Fighters was basically like that was the thing. So you knew that like you wanted something like that, something that evoked that same kind of nostalgia that you had.
Well, like I said, when I was creating stuff as a kid, there was a book called Horrible Harry, and there's a character like would create little figures out of his erasers and pencils, and that's something I did as a kid too. So I remember I'm like, okay, I want to create a toy. How do I create a toy? No idea. All right, well, let's start with story and let's start with something. And I just started spitballing ideas, and the first idea was, well, I can't really make a toy right now. I don't know the ins and out. But what if I created like instruction pamphlets of how-tos to make your own toy, but like I'll create the backstory, so like it's not just a stupid stick figure or something, like it has the action figure feel in it. I'll create the packaging, I'll create something. So I started like, okay, how can I make my own toy? And like my brain instantly went to those ideas of as a kid. And Major Eraser, for instance, is the first character I would draw and create as a kid. I'd stick a thumbtack in an eraser's eye, I draw the face, sticking paper clips into his arms and legs, and voila, that was my toy. So when I wanted to create a toy, that first came to mind. And again, I'm buying all these old toys. Ninja Turtles was a huge one. X-Men, Toy Biz, all those things just started like sparking all this ideas and imagination just going crazy. So voila, 9 to 5 Warriors was literally born off that idea of like, okay, how can I invoke other people's imagination? Well, maybe I can get them to create with their hands. And then little by little, started developing the stories. Like, okay, there could be a pencil character, there could be an eraser character, there could be a rubber bound character, and then create the drama. Like, who are they fighting? Well, maybe food, so rotten food, and I went from there. It's kind of crazy, but I don't know how it came to be, but somehow it all makes sense.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah. So I love it too, because like you kind of talked about like that's the 9 to 5 Warriors. It's sort of like this office setting where you've got like this rotten food and like office supplies. It's kind of like the theme that you went with. But again, like going back to the Food Fighters, it still has that same kind of feel of like the different factions of food warring after each other. But now we've got like the food versus the office supplies, that's such a fun idea. I love it. And again, like it kind of gives you that like jumping in point, especially if you are a fan of somebody like Food Fighters, because you've got these new food characters, but like you're expanding that whole concept and that idea into some of these other like inanimate everyday household objects, which is really, really fun. So I don't know, why don't you tell us about some of these characters or like how you kind of design these guys?
100%. Real quick to tie into that, like I was mad as a kid. So when I discovered Food Fighters back in '93, I was mad that there was no cartoon series. I was remember asking like, where can I watch? Like my mom, can you put on Food Fighter? And there's literally nothing. There's no story. There's nothing. And I just fell flat. So again, coming from my production background, the video, like I knew I wanted story. Story is what makes like everything come together. That's why we're still fans of Ninja Turtles. That's why we still love G.I. Joe, Ghostbusters, etc.
Right.
It was a cartoon. It was the story. It was the animated intro, the catchy theme song, was the whole shebang. So going back, like that's where I started. I created an animation. I created trading cards. I traded like all these things to develop the story and showcase the characters. And then I gave up because I was like, I still want to make the toy. I don't know how to make the actual toy. Cut 2 years later with the pandemic, I discovered Scott Hensley, and we started creating Major Eraser and Colonel Custard. So we'll start with them. So real quick with the story of 9 to 5 Warriors, the story follows an office loner named Alan McMillan, and he's basically the kid version of me. Like He created things in his office cubicle. He kept himself. He would make his little action figures out of his, his office supplies and leftover food. And so as he spoke to these characters in real life, he embedded those personalities into each and every one of them. So Major Eraser, literally being an eraser, known to fix any mistakes, has that same mentality. He came to life. He was sparked to life through Ginsei, a Japanese energy drink, in typical 90s fashion, surge protector and sparks them to life. So Major Eraser was the first creation, and him being an eraser, I literally known to fix any mistake. And he has that personality when he's born to life. He has this kind of understanding of they're a mistake. They were created by accidental a surge protector and ginseng bringing him to life. So he has this dual complex of he knows they shouldn't exist and he wants to protect them from being discovered. And he obviously wants to fight Colonel Custard, who I'll show later, that he wants the complete opposite. He's angry that he was thrown away, being a delicious donut he was taking a bite out of, and someone tossed it away. So he's got this vindictive vengeance against the humans. So Major wants to fix everything that Colonel Custard ends up creating, these other minions along the way. And that's hopefully, spurs new characters in typical, 90s fashion.
Right,
have
right.
Endless amount of characters.
I love it. Yeah, so you're holding an actual, is that the prototype right there that you're holding onto?
Yeah, so this one is hand painted and 3D printed, but the original sculpt was by Scott Hensley. And for those that don't know who Scott is, he's basically the man behind half your cabinet, I bet. So he's done the vintage Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original bad guys, Shredders, Bebop, Rocksteady. He's done Exo Squad. He's done freaking Street Sharks. He's done everything you can probably imagine, plus a ton of Happy Meal toys, which is kind of crazy. When I'm damn it, I talked to him and I'm you did that too? What the hell? It's one of my favorite Happy Meal toys. Who has a favorite Happy Meal toy? And it's
right.
God has done so much,
That's amazing.
So
that's amazing.
This is the prototype. It will be production ready. I stuck with the 5-point articulation for this. I wanted to evoke that 90s nostalgia feel. And then I do believe that having limited articulation again sparks imagination. For me, having so much articulation, I kind of feel, I don't know how to pose them. I get lost. I'm how do I want them? I'm indecisive. I do plan on, of course, making a Ultimates version of these guys, but out the gate, I really wanted them to stay true to the original fashion.
Sure. Yeah. I think that totally works for these guys. In my humble opinion, I love the very retro aesthetic with the articulation.
Thank you.
So that was Major Eraser. And you mentioned Colonel Custard too. And Colonel Custard is the first one I feel that caught my eye. And I assume that's because that really does have that very Food Fighters feel to it. Yeah. Because you mentioned he's the donut who's got the bite taken out of him.
Exactly.
He's incredible. He's so fun looking. I love this guy.
So he's a mastermind. He's a Napoleon complex. And I love Scott sculpted him originally as well. And when I just give the descriptions, a character description of Scott, I'm telling him all his personality tweaks. He thinks he's bigger than he is. He's making up for his shortcomings. He's angry and he's bitter. And Scott then translate that. If they were standing on the same, plane, you'd see his cape towers over him just slightly, just to give the appearance of a larger entity. And it's little details like that I just really love that Scott put into it. But his leaky core is revealed, his bites taken out of. He does glow in the dark, his eyes and the core. He has a fun little shield that's made out of the coffee lid that he was just served with. And yeah, this is a fun little character, Colonel Custard.
I didn't even notice that before. What a great point that the shield is a coffee lid. That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. It is so much fun.
With every character, I try to the scale is, I wouldn't say 1-to-1, but it is pretty close to 1-to-1. I want it that, again, the element of imagination. So I want you to take these characters, and I know a lot of people have this issue of storage space. I start running out of space to put my toys. So I kind of stopped collecting things, just I'm picky where they're going to live on a shelf. So for me, I wanted to create toys that I could leave anywhere. So they live in a cabinet at times. They live in my office, in my cubicle. They live in the drawers. They live everywhere, and they kind of fit. And so every character kind of has a little tidbit of this is a real life size of a pen cap with a thumbtack stuck into it, and it looks like a little launcher, you know, a shoulder launcher. And there's little things like that I just, again, wanted to play into imagination. Anything to spark your imagination is what I'm aiming for with this line.
That's amazing. That is so much fun. All right, that one was Lieutenant Led that you just held up?
Yeah, so we'll go down the line. So
all right, yeah.
So next in command after Major Racer is his trusty number 2, Lieutenant Led. And he's basically a stand-up guy. He will do whatever Major says. He's, you know, like, he's there for him no matter what. The ultimate pencil, the ultimate tool. It's the best supply for any job. And the backstory on him, so going back to Alan had one pencil, his favorite pencil, perfect supply for any job. And the office bully, one day snaps it into half. Alan, being a resourceful guy that he is, he sharpens one end and, you know, voila, Lieutenant Lead's still a good pencil. He does eraser and the lead bottom. But on the other end, yeah, this like useless tool. Like he sharpened both ends. You can't really make a mistake with it. And so thus number 2 was created, his evil twin brother, who has this vindictive attitude again, because so he's on the bad side. So really quickly, it's the water cooler commandos versus the break room bandits. And as you said, it's kind of food versus office supplies, but each faction has one of each on each side. So the water cooler commandos has Corporal Can, who's up there. I'll introduce him later. And he's a food character, but he's non-perishable. So he didn't like have to deal with the struggles of being thrown away. But number 2, he had that feeling of not belonging, not fitting in, not being used. And he became vindictive and the evil person that he is. His sword comes out. He's able to hold it. And I know I'm jumping around, but they kind of go hand in hand. So one cool fact about this guy, he's an ode to Shredder, and his nickname is Shredder. And that stance is what I felt was like a cool, again, kind of when you go to limited articulation,
sure,
the pose you're with has to tell a story and has to, you know, give some semblance of the character as well. Because imagine a kid picks this up, he doesn't have the card back or anything. Like, what can he get from this? He looks clearly like a ninja. He's on the defensive. He's slick. He has bite marks on the back. Like little things like that can help. And Shredder came to mind of like, I love that weird stance that, you know, as I'm sure you know, he's in that stance to basically save money and make sure that he fits in the packaging with the rest of the turtles.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That classic wide out stance where it's almost he was always so hard to stand up.
I think this one he's good. I made
this
sure
one's good. Okay, good.
I was like, stop, don't do that again.
The bite marks on the back too, those stood out to me immediately. I think that is so cool, just like the little chews and everything there. But I love that. I didn't realize that this was like the bad guy pencil. Like I noticed we have the 2 pencil characters, but I love the storytelling there. That is so fun.
I think everyone has I think drama makes a good story. So everyone has a little bit of a backstory and, you know, a competitor basically. So with these 2 brothers, you know, being perfect supply, perfect for any job, he knows how to handle himself. Him being the odd man out, he's a lone wolf. He doesn't really belong. Yes, he's part of the break room bandits, but at any moment, he's trying to be number 1.
Right.
he's sneaking behind, you know, Colonel Custard's back. He's plotting and scheming. And this is another look at Lieutenant Led. I'll take out his weapon. And what's cool is, again, majority of the weapons are really designed in real life materials. So depending on which sculptor I was working with, some are done by Scott Hensley, and some are done digitally by Sebastian from Planetary Dogs. He's known for the Plunderlings toy line.
Oh,
and
very
what was cool.
Yeah,
that's a great toy line too for those that don't know.
Absolutely.
So I'm not an artist at all. I can't draw. I can use Photoshop and I can mock up things. But it was important for me. I create some of these weapons, take photos of them, and then send them off to Scott or Seba. And like within minutes, I'd see the actual counterpart, like created in clay or digitally if it was Seba. So this one was done by Scott. So really cool details, little things like it's cool having them in your hand. And I know I wanted to send them to you, but since their prototypes are all fragile, like I don't trust them myself. They've been through hell filming the commercials. I literally smashed them everywhere.
Gosh, in the mail and everything too. I always would feel so bad if like something showed up and it's just like destroyed.
It's
Like, no.
heard many horror
No, this
stories.
is great. That's why I'm glad we're doing this. Like you having
Yeah.
them there in hand, I think is so cool to actually see you holding the physical items. Because I've been staring at these pictures on your Instagram forever, but they look so fun in hand.
Thank you, man. So next up, I'll talk about Brigadier Bouncy. So
Awesome.
it wouldn't be, a commando unit with an explosion without an explosion specialist. And to me, no other like who would handle explosion best in a 90s comedy is, the goofball. So going back to character designs and like character ideas when I was sketching this out, like I just wanted fun characters. And the funnest office supply to me would be a ball of rubber bands. Like you literally
Yeah.
create something to be bored of, you bounce it around the room. So I wanted to embody like just the comic relief of the group. So if the show ever does get made, he'll be, throwing belches and farts and grenades at the same time.
Excellent.
But this is another example of Scott. This is hand detailed. Sorry, Scott, I made you do all these little rubber bands. He was like, it's a challenge, but challenge accepted. Super cool details.
Man, I love how big and chunky he is. Like, I guess I didn't
Yeah.
like the photos don't really show just how big that one is.
What's cool is it's not done in this prototype, but once they go into production, he will be actual bouncy. So he'll be made out of bouncy material. His arms and legs will pop, or no legs, just his arms will pop out, and you'll be able to actually bounce them and roll them around.
Really? So just like a softer, like rubbery material, or
Yeah.
is it like just okay, cool.
Kind of like a big bouncy ball, like those little gum, but
Yeah.
better. It's not going to chip away. Like I make sure that the factory understands that. But this is another cool example of like can't draw. Sent Scott, an image of the the highlighter with a rubber band and a binder clip, and then within a day he created this. And I loved working like that. Like everything was it was still. I mean, he's all the way in California, so we had to work remotely and stuff. But
Sure.
it was cool to still kind of have like a hands-on process, So Brigadier Bouncy. Bouncy. Bouncy Edwards is his name.
I love
And
it.
he's the explosion specialist.
Awesome.
Then last in the water cooler commandos is Corporal Can. So he being a food, like first up, I was like, how am I gonna make a toy out of a freaking can of peanuts? And the first thing that came to mind was an army of bucket men, where now the bucket itself is actually the figure. So he pops open the lid. I won't do it right now, but he pops open because the plastic. So it pops open, and inside there's like a little shelf, and inside that shelf or behind that shelf is like his little peanut minions. They can rest there. So going back on the Army Man idea, like I wanted to create these guys like to have like a built-in stance that you can place around your office, again,
Yeah.
or your cabinet. Like I was just really thinking of like, okay, if I'm gonna buy a new toy, I want something where I can stick and play with anywhere, with any which way. So these guys are like super cool. And this sculptor was Seba. And so for those that don't know like how digital sculpting works, like hand sculpting versus digital, there's a difference. When you're doing it by hand, you see the detail, you see the mistakes, you like see fingerprints sometimes. You can clean those all up, but that's what makes the beauty of a toy, in my opinion, like that handmade feel. Some of these toys needed to be done digitally just because, we didn't get the Scotchy back there, but the mechanics of like the Scotch tape had to be perfect. These guys had to be kind of worked perfectly. And I wasn't going to make Scott like do a cylinder. So little things like that had to be digital. But I told the digital artist, like, turn off everything that makes it symmetry. Turn off the things that make your job easier. Granted, I'm paying you by the hour, and this is all self-financed, but make it look handmade, sort of. And I think he did an amazing job. Truly, like these guys are so freaking cool. Like, and I really didn't know how people would react to a can of nuts and this style, but he's doing really well in the cell. He's really popular, and I just keep hearing people like they want to know more about his storyline, and that's what it is about for me.
That's cool,
So
and that's awesome. That's awesome to hear that he's like a popular one too, because he's definitely a fun idea. Like now that you're explaining it, kind of in the style of like a bucket of army men, and like the peanuts are like his little army men. That's awesome. That's brilliant.
So his backstory is he started with the Break Room Bandits. He is a food. after hearing Colonel Custard's plans of like office domination, he started backing away. Like, this guy's a little crazy, even for me. He's a little nuts. And so basically he reverted back to, or not reverted, he, went back to the water cooler commandos, told him what was happening, and wanted to join forces and help him out. So he's the communication expert specialist for the water cooler commandos. And going back again to the sketches and the original idea of like creating this team and this character base, like I knew every team needs, a mechanic, explosion specialist, the Rambo type, a loyal soldier, and then a communication specialist. And for me, I was like, what makes a good communicator? Like, I don't know. But growing up, I was in that age where we still like tie a string to a can.
Yeah.
Play telephone. Like, I still was kind of in that era where it was displayed on TV shows and cartoon. So I was like, what better than a can of nuts to be the relay team? And he and his nutty spies literally can be placed around the office. They'll intercept messages, they'll call the shots and lead the water cooler commandos to victory.
That is so cool. That is so cool. And I didn't even put that together with like the string coming out of the top of the can. That's genius, man. I love that. I love that.
Thank you. Let me get this out. All right. Tape. So last but not least is Scotchy. He's my personal favorite. Even though I technically started with Major in my mind, I made him as a kid. Scotchy quickly became like one of my favorites, and he's literally the mechanic of the group. So again, going back to the list of like what makes an excellent squad, you got to have a mechanic. You got to have that I can make anything kind of guy. He makes anything out of scraps. He's he'll build the weapons, the tanks, the barriers, and who better than to fix everything but Scotch tape? And he's literally made out of Scotch tape. So to remove this, you literally pop off his arms, his head. Everything comes disassembled, and then underneath the kilt is literally a Scotch tape thing. I have to post a video like on just that because it is cool to see. I don't want to do it here because I scratched up the paint just now. Again, prototype only, guys.
Right.
But it's a cool freaking mechanism. So this was something I knew had to be done with SEPA because it had to be precision tight. It had to be perfect to work with practically any reusable tape dispenser coil. And what's cool is like he can rappel down things. I always have him like sitting on the edge of the TV, or I'll place him on the wall, have him hanging upside down. Like, he's just one of those fun characters that are like, this is a legit toy that I would love to have as a kid. Now I get him as an adult.
He's another one that really stood out to me. Like the second I started seeing those pictures of him like with actual tape, I was like, that is ridiculously fun. Like, I can't believe like what a great idea.
Thank you, man.
This guy. And then the little thumbtacks and everything, talking about all the various like supplies and everything uses their weapons. Like it's so fun. I love it.
Thank you.
What a great design.
That was, like, everything to make you feel like a kid again, and like just again spark imagination. That's the goal here. And
here
what's
he is,
cool,
like, climbing down the cabinet.
So of course he has a Scottish accent as well. So hopefully once the show ever does get made, he should be a cool, fun character that brings. You buy down tape, buddy. Brings everything to life.
Awesome.
Right.
That's awesome.
So that's the Water Cooler Commandos. It's a ragtag group of office supplies. And next up are the Break Room Bandits. So as we saw, they're led by Colonel Custard, the menacing Donut. His right-hand woman is Specialist Sugar.
Aha.
So this was a cool character to design. This one was done digitally. And the premise was this girl, she's a powerhouse. She's smart. She's sexy, beautiful. She's intelligent. She really is like the brains of the bandits. Although Custer doesn't listen to her too much, she doesn't get the respect she needs. But she wrangles the guys, the rest of the bandits in order. She is created from artificial sweetness, so she's fake sweet. And what was cool was
that's amazing. The things that you're putting together to create the characteristics of these people is just, it's amazing. These characters, I love it.
There's puns for days. Like,
yeah.
But, what's cool is she'll come with replaceable arms and arms. And so this is like the Terminator, T2 style with like the sword arm, and get a little closer. And then the other side is that powerful fist. The idea is to be able to replace her arms, like maybe expansion pants, or like build upon her base because her waist pops off as well.
Oh,
And I'm
okay.
just thinking of fun ways to expand the line later on, or just redesign completely. But always looking to like reuse modes. But her personality is super cool. Like she's again been a popular figure. I didn't know. Like I'm even going more limited with her. I wanted her base to, and I've done this. I haven't shown it in videos, but I've actually put her in like a pile of sugar, and she looks so awesome merging out. And I got to upload that clip. But it's like, it was a really cool seeing that develop digitally again. Seba did an amazing job bringing her to life, and thankfully she's been received really well. So this is Specialist Sugar.
Yeah, so you talked about her being like the artificial sweetener, which I love. Your explanation for her being fake sweet is hilarious. I love it. But like I didn't notice it first until like I realized that she was artificial sweetener, that like the dress is like a pink packet. Like that's so cool. It's so cool.
So after her would be number 2, and I gave him a pretty good description already, but again, really loved the design. Love everything that Scott put into these guys, the bite marks, everything you saw before.
Yeah, he's so fun.
So after that is Sergeant Spore, and he's another favorite that I'm like, I didn't expect I'd love so much, but he's basically BLT, big load of trouble. And since he was at the bottom of the trash, like most rotten, his brain is not quite all there. He's a loyal henchman. His specialty on the card, it says, is especially is crunching pencils, not numbers. So he's like, again, a little dumb for his he's a brute force. He's massive, and he's the biggest out of all of them. So their scale is roughly all 3.75. 3.75 is what major is, and they're all relative to him. And so going back to the design of him, I wanted him to make sure that he towered directly over Major Razor. So going back to like, if you didn't have a card, you didn't have any backstory, you could tell that he's like a menacing character. He's overarching other people. And what's cool too is like he again towers over, but like he's right behind Colonel Custard, like he's got his back, So it's little details like that I really love to put together. On his back is, a rotten Band-Aid.
The Band-Aid.
He's got spores and maggots coming out of him. Super cool character. This was done digitally as well by Seba. And to me, I wouldn't, honestly, if you put them in a lineup and say which one's digital, which one's hand sculpted, like to me, I can't tell the difference. The last but not least is, did I get it? Yeah, Commodore Chris. And this guy, dude, he's like everyone's like blown away by him, which is awesome. So
this guy is my favorite. He's my favorite.
Cool,
I'll just so the Colonel Custard is the one that first caught my attention, but when you revealed this guy, like I was like, this is the one. This is the one. It's so cool. So yes, please show this guy off. I can't wait to see him.
So just like the Water Cooler Commandos, they have their communication specialist. Commodore is a reconnaissance. So what's great about him is he actually splits into 3 separate characters. So this is the base, one preload ship. And Scott was just genius with this. This is where his years of making Happy Meal toys just came into play. You can just tell he's so awesome. When he sent me the photos and they were in clay, I was just like, oh, I was throwing it around this is amazing. So every character has some indentation where the feet or arms stick in. So that's the bottom stack. This is the middle stack that holds up like this and comes with his arm. He has a little shark mouth looking character. Again, Pringle's design. He has, the foot marks for the top character, and then the top character comes out like this. So just so genius. The premise, again, I told Scott, listen, I got one character. I don't know how we're going to do it. Might need magnets. We might need to use, I had so many elaborate ideas of how it could work. And he just came back with this. So I was like, you nailed it, man. This is so genius. I don't think I could have ever come up with it.
He's amazing. I mean, I totally, just like you got excited when you saw it. I seriously marked out when I saw this thing. When I saw that you could take him apart into 3 different characters, I was like, this is genius. This feels like the next evolution of what we saw with Food Fighters. If those figures had kept going, we would have seen stuff like this. it feels
100%.
like. So I love him. I think he's so cool. So cool.
Real quick with Spore, I forgot to mention, like one of the little odes to him is like he has this like menacing gangster's hat, which was very much an ode to Mean Wiener.
Ah,
So, like,
yeah, there you
he's
go.
his little gangster henchman, which is, you know, typical of the 50s, I guess. You're like, hello, yeah. So this is kind of his personality.
And I love you got food fighters there. Can you show us some side by sides of those guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be awesome to see that too.
So I wish I had a table here separately for this. Actually, let me see if I can tilt down.
Oh, there you go.
Boop, boop. All right, so let me put these guys there. The biggest one, like I said, is Spore. And then we got Lieutenant Led. Here is Mean Wiener.
Oh, yeah. Wow. He towers over him.
Put it back over here. So, yeah, he's once you put him on the same plane, he'll tower over him, which is kind of cool. Food Fighters, the one thing I didn't love is like the scale is just like all over the place. You got like a stack of pancakes next to fries.
You're right. Yeah.
It just like nothing really made sense, but it was whatever. It was an 80s funny, wacky.
Exactly. One. Yeah. They were all different types of foods, but they were like the same size. So yours are a bit going for more realistic proportions with one another.
Yeah, and they all vary. You know, the tallest being 5.25. The shortest is short stack over here. I mean, basically Commodore Chris. And he's, I think, exactly 3 inches, or maybe I have to double check. But this is Commodore Chris. Let me fix this. Commodore Chris to short stack. This mirror is throwing me off. There you go.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, that's cool though. Look at those guys, DM.
Yeah, they play well. Like, there's a video on my Instagram that like shows them working inside the vehicles and things like that. Like, it works out. They're obviously not 100% going to like stick in the same pegs. Mine are a little wider, but they will fit in, you know, in the same combat carton. So
the combat carton, amazing.
So in the video, I show, you know, number 2 sitting in this little weird seat where the pizza would hang out.
Yeah,
and like they work, and which is cool. It's like I definitely want to, you know, if for those fans that actually do love the Foo Fighters, it definitely will play into it.
Oh, look at that!
Just break it. So once it snaps in, his eyes peek out just right.
Perfect.
Where's my dude? Commodore Chris sits perfectly in the back, the stacks. And then Spore, he's massive. He's just like running alongside it. He doesn't fit inside it, but it's awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Flip it over with no issue. The same thing with the, you know, the fry chopper and everything else. They all play well within the same universe. You know, in an ideal world, if I can ever get their license and remake them, they have a story now. They can be, you know, introduced properly and given the backstory that they never were given.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah. So a lot of them, like, yeah. So these are good examples. So these are like pretty much identical in size.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Dude,
so
they look great.
Been cool to play with like the old and the new, and like they fit in. Just even with Ninja Turtles, they just fit into that world. And I was like, God, this is actually happening.
Oh, I love it. I love it. No, these are the exact kind of weirdos that I love. This is toys being toys. I think that's so cool. That's so cool. So everything looks great, man. I think the characters are really fun designs. The toys look really good. So we should talk about like how these are going to be produced, like where they're available and everything. And it's my understanding that right now, as of the time we're recording this, there are open pre-orders for these through bigbadtoystore.com, correct?
Correct, yeah. So right now they're available through Big Bad Toy Store. They're not exclusive to them, which was important for me to figure out other retail partners. They wanted them to be kind of the only online one, but I wanted them to make sure that they're able to get into brick and mortars and different retailers like that. So, but right now they're available for pre-order. The way it's worked, it's basically a Kickstarter without the Kickstarter. So as long as I've reached the minimum order quantity of all 10 characters, they all get into production. At this rate, I don't know if I'll be able to reach all 10. And I'll say that my biggest fear, one thing, is like having 10 characters. I knew there would be favorites. I knew some would be like outselling others. And I shit you not, or I don't know, I kid you not, like they're selling all consecutively and even. Like there really is, there's clearly a big winner. Yeah. But like this is the big winner, then directly him and Colonel Custard are literally out for number one. They keep going, and Major Racers in there as well. So they're in the top.
I can see
they're in the top three. Then I'm not lying, like from the top one to the very top bottom, like it's only like 20 difference, like 20 individual sales. I'm like, that's kind of crazy. Like I really didn't think. I thought I might have to pair them up, like going back to like how am I gonna make a toy out of can of nuts? Everyone's been responding really well to each individual character, and like that's what's cool, and that's what was the hope. Is like I wanted to make a variety of different personalities, someone that can relate to this guy, that girl, and that's what's happening. Like I'm happy for that, but now that being said, I have 10 out, and that was always just going to be a warning for indie developers. Just sort of those that I love to educate people. For those that don't know how toys are made, it's really freaking expensive, and it's really hard. And at the end of the day, you have to reach a minimum order quantity to obviously cover the costs of your tooling and cover the cost of the production. So typically, most people launch with maybe 2, 4, max toys. Like you said, I've been at this for a while. I launched last year with 2, which was Major Eraser and Colonel Custard. The Kickstarter fell through, and that was just out of me. I didn't know how to run a Kickstarter. Like I launched on day one, didn't do any marketing, and literally Kickstarter says, "Oh, most successful are like 30 days." I'm like, okay, 30 days. So I started marketing on day one. All the like bloggers and response PR, it like happened, day 28, and I was like, oh shit, I didn't meet my quota. But the number one request for all of that was, will you have more characters? Like, what's the universe look like? They didn't want to. A lot of people don't want to invest in something if it's just the two.
If it's just going to be like the one guy or the two guys, they want like a new toy line to collect. That makes sense. So that's the trick, though, right? Like you said, because as a toy maker, it's risky to give them 10 figures at once. But as a consumer, you want to know that there's going to be more to this. So that's 100%. Where you have to find. So
I experimented, I got a lot of people like, I don't know if you're going to make it, but I'm like, I got to try. And one thing I do believe a lot of even major toy brands don't have today are commercials. Like they don't spend money on video. And I have that video background. So if you have discovered me or you've seen something, I'm sure you've seen one of my videos. They're scattered around the internet. And thankfully, what was cool is I wanted to make sure that they look like they're, lost from the 90s. And they also tell the story of the characters. So there's like a couple one-liners in the description just to give a little bit of the backstory of each character and describe the world, So I thought I had the right ingredients, like video content. I gotta just push marketing really hard and let's see what happens with 10 characters. I'm doing good in the sales. I will say that. Like I said, there is no differences, but it's not good enough to get all 10 made at this point just yet. I'm praying. Let's see what happens. So I have at the end of the day, I don't have a deadline, but I want them to go into production come March. So I can at least get 4 or wherever much I can like self-finance through and just get them into production, get into people's hands so that the other 6 can get made, But at the moment, all 10 are up for a Big Bad Toy Store.
Great. So if you don't hit those goals, will you just go into production with a few of them or is that the plan? Okay.
Yeah, whatever I can self-finance. At the moment, I think I can do 4.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. Like,
so that's what you meant. You could do the 4, hopefully, and then hopefully you can get to the other 6 down the road. But that's only if like we don't meet the goals. Hopefully,
I'm
like
still very optimistic, man.
Well, let's just stay very optimistic. Hopefully, this video will help spread the word too, and people will get out there and check these out. So the pre-orders are happening right now over at BigBadToyStore.com. I'll make sure I link to it in the video description down there. So everybody can check it out. These are super fun, and I would love to see these get produced because man, we need more wacky ideas like this in the toy world. I love this sort of thing, man. I think you're doing something really awesome here. So
I love it. Like honestly, and no hate to like, I just feel like the adult collectors are constantly fed because they know there's a baked in audience, and like marketing is the biggest, hardest thing, even for yourself. I'm sure it's hard to get your stuff out there. Right. So for an indie toy line with no backstory, no commercials, no cartoons, like it's really hard to get something out there. That shouldn't be the deterring factor to try something new. And I feel like a lot of these companies keep rehashing something new, and like I'm kind of over it. Like I was having fun for the first few years, but now I'm like can't keep buying another remake.
No, I
can't.
get that. I get that. No, I do. I talk about that quite a bit, how things are so different now. Like we all talk about how great the 80s and 90s were, but all that stuff was like brand new and being made for us.
Yeah, man.
And everything today is just IP based, right? Like
Yeah.
everything is based on that stuff that was successful 30 and 40 years ago, it feels like. So we don't see a lot of these brand new ideas anymore because a lot of these companies are afraid to take risks on something that's not
100%.
a baked in IP. So yes, it is very difficult for a lot of indie toy makers to get their ideas out there, but I love it. I love to see the creativity, and I love to see sort of just like that. It's just that like that small business thing, right? Like doing something that you love, something that you're passionate about, and putting it out there. So
Thank you.
I'm hoping for the best for you, man. I really am. I would love to see these happen.
My end goal is really like, I call these a 90s inspired action figure series that aims to respark the magic of the Saturday morning cartoon era. My true goal is to create a new Saturday morning cartoon era, like to combat with what you just said. I think a lot of companies are fearful to take that initial step because, you know, they have to spend money on marketing no matter what. So it's like spend money on an existing market that they know exists, the G.I. Joes and Ninja Turtles, like you name it. Spend it there and guaranteed, you know, you'll make your money. Or spend it on a whole new IP and hopefully it gets on Netflix and hopefully it has a cartoon series and hopefully people will watch it and hopefully people, like there's so many hopefullys there. But to me, I'm like, I'd rather take that risk. Like I just picked this like Dino Riders and like, this is sick. Like the fact that it's Tycho created this. And Tycho knew, like, even though this was a failure, but they knew they had to have story and they had to have these characters and they had to create their own content. And what's funny is like throughout playing this, there's random Tycho ads for their building blocks, for their RC cars, for their other things. And it was like really smart. And like, why, like in our day and age right now, with content is king, like why has no other companies really stepped forward like that? You know? Yeah. And that's my goal. Yeah. So
I love it.
It starts with this, but I'd love to help bring up the other cool indie makers that are doing some amazing stuff out there that just don't have, you know, the bandwidth to do it all. Like design a toy, make it, produce content, and then market.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. I love it, man. I love it. This is great. Cool. Well, Brandon, this has been a really, really great chat. I love getting kind of an up close look at everything and an explanation of the toy line and everything behind it. Was there anything else that you wanted to add? Anything that you feel like everybody needs to know about these?
I talk a lot, so I think if you stayed around, I think
if we covered it all, that's great. Yeah.
I think it's all out there. And if you like, follow me on Instagram, you know, it's all there as well. It's all on the website, 9to5warriors.com. I love when people DM me and tell me like, oh my God, I created this character. This would be an awesome character. And they're showing me sketches or they're like telling me how they can't wait for it to be in their homes. And like that, you know, makes my heart sing. Like I know I'm on the right track with something and I really just can't wait for them to get out there, you know, and then see what people do with them.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for taking the time to
thank you, man.
Show everything off. And man, I'm really excited. I really hope that everything goes through on these, and I'm definitely going to hopefully do my part with this video to share the information for you and get it out there. But thanks for stopping by, man. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Honestly.
Awesome. Well, the guys, go check it out. Cool. BigBadToyStore.com. Do a search for 9to5 Warriors. All of those are up for pre-order right now. And you can also check out 9to5warriors.com. Check them out over on Instagram. Follow the process of this very cool looking toy line. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another interview. And until next time.